The cargo ship Aurora screamed through the atmosphere of planet Valdris like a burning meteor. Ben Torres gripped the control stick with both hands, fighting to keep the ship steady as warning alarms blared around him. The navigation system had failed 3 hours ago, and now the main engine was dying. "Come on, baby," Ben whispered to his ship. "Just a little longer." But the Aurora had other plans. With a final shudder, the engine cut out completely. Ben pulled back on the controls, trying to glide the heavy cargo vessel toward what looked like a flat area below. The ship hit the ground hard, bouncing twice before sliding to a stop in a cloud of dust and smoke. Ben sat in the pilot's seat for a moment, checking himself for injuries. A cut on his forehead bled slightly and his shoulder ached, but he was alive. That was more than he had expected 30 seconds ago. He grabbed his emergency kit and stepped outside. The air on Valdris was thin but breathable. Red rock stretched in all directions under an orange sky. Twin suns hung low on the horizon, which meant night would come soon. Ben had read about this planet during his cargo runs. When darkness fell, things got dangerous fast. The Aurora was finished. Her hull was cracked and fuel leaked from the damaged tanks. Ben would need to call for rescue, but first he had to find the emergency beacon in the cargo hold. As he walked around the ship, something caught his eye. About 50 meters away, black metal glinted in the fading sunlight. Another crash site. Ben grabbed his toolkit and jogged over to investigate. The wreckage was unlike anything he had seen before. The metal was smooth and curved in ways that seemed impossible. Alien technology. Ben had heard stories about non-human ships, but he had never seen one up close. Then he heard it. A weak cry for help. Ben rushed toward the sound and found someone trapped beneath a large piece of the alien ship's hull. It was definitely not human. The being had pale blue skin and silver hair that seemed to glow in the dim light. She wore elaborate clothing that looked expensive and royal. "Help," the alien woman said in accented English. "Please help me." Ben could see that the metal piece was too heavy for one person to lift safely. The woman's legs were trapped, and moving the wrong way might make her injuries worse. But Ben also knew that night was coming, and he had heard the stories about what hunted in the darkness on Valdris. "I'm going to get you out," Ben said, kneeling beside her. "What's your name?" "I am Queen Zara of the Corvani Empire," she replied, her voice growing weaker. "My ship was attacked by pirates. The engines failed during our escape." A queen. Ben felt a moment of panic. He was just a cargo pilot, not qualified to help royalty. But looking at her pale face and the pain in her eyes, he knew he had to try. Ben examined the trapped hull piece carefully. It was wedged against a rock on one side. If he could create a lever system, he might be able to lift it enough for Queen Zara to crawl free. He ran back to his ship and grabbed a metal pipe from the cargo bay, along with some emergency rope and a portable power jack. The shadows were getting longer as he worked, setting up his makeshift rescue system. "This might hurt a little," Ben warned as he positioned the pipe under the hull piece. "But I need you to pull yourself out as soon as I lift this thing." Queen Zara nodded weakly. Ben activated the power jack and slowly began to raise the heavy metal. The pipe groaned under the weight, but it held. As soon as there was enough space, Queen Zara pulled herself free, crying out in pain but managing to escape. Ben quickly lowered the hull piece and rushed to her side. Her left leg was badly bruised but not broken. She would be able to walk with support. "Thank you," Queen Zara said, looking at Ben with amazement. "You risked your life for a stranger." "Anyone would have done the same," Ben replied, though he was not sure that was true. A deep roar echoed across the rocky landscape. Then another from a different direction. Queen Zara's eyes went wide with fear. "The night hunters," she whispered. "They are coming." Ben helped Queen Zara to her feet and supported her weight as they moved toward his crashed ship. The cargo hold would provide better shelter than the open ground. He sealed the bay doors and activated the emergency power cells to give them light and heat. Using supplies from both crash sites, Ben created a small medical area where he could treat Queen Zara's injuries. She watched him work with curious eyes. "Your species is very resourceful," she observed as Ben bandaged her leg. "Most beings would have panicked in this situation." "Humans adapt," Ben said simply. "We have to. Our world taught us that you either learn to solve problems or you don't survive." Outside, the night hunters began to circle their makeshift shelter. Ben could hear claws scratching on metal and deep breathing. He checked his energy rifle and settled in for a long night of standing guard. Queen Zara rested against the cargo containers, watching Ben prepare their defenses. She had never met anyone like him before. Most people in her empire would have demanded a reward before helping her. This human had risked everything for someone he had just met. As the first hunter began testing the sealed doors, Ben Torres stood ready to defend them both, unaware that this single act of courage would change the fate of two worlds. The first night on Valdris lasted forever. Ben stayed awake while Queen Zara rested, listening to the night hunters prowl around their shelter. The creatures scratched at the cargo bay doors and made awful sounds, but the sealed ship held strong. When the twin suns rose again, the hunters retreated to wherever they spent the day. Ben activated his emergency beacon and sent out a distress signal. With luck, someone would pick it up within a few days. Queen Zara woke slowly, wincing as she moved her injured leg. Ben had prepared some heated rations from his emergency supplies and offered her a meal. "This is human food?" she asked, examining the simple protein bar. "Space rations," Ben explained. "Not fancy, but it keeps you alive." Queen Zara took a small bite and made a face. "It tastes like metal and sadness." Ben laughed despite their situation. "That's exactly what we call it. Metal and sadness bars." As the day went on, Ben worked on repairing their shelter while Queen Zara watched. She seemed fascinated by how he solved each problem with whatever materials he could find. When a water recycler broke, he fixed it using parts from a broken communication device. When the heating unit failed, he rerouted power from non-essential systems. "On my world, we would call specialists for each of these tasks," Queen Zara said. "Different experts for water, for power, for repairs." "How do you know so many skills?" "Cargo pilots learn everything," Ben replied, connecting two mismatched wires. "Out here in space, you're alone for months. If something breaks and you can't fix it yourself, you die." Queen Zara was quiet for a long moment. "Your people must be very strong to live this way." "We're stubborn," Ben said with a smile. "There's a difference." That evening, as they waited for the night hunters to return, Queen Zara told Ben about her empire. She described worlds with crystal cities and floating gardens, planets where her people lived in harmony with amazing technology. "It sounds beautiful," Ben said. "But what about the regular people? The ones who aren't royalty?" Queen Zara looked confused. "What do you mean? Who grows the food? Who builds the ships? Who fixes things when they break?" "We have workers for those tasks," Queen Zara said slowly. "They are assigned their roles based on their family lines and abilities." Ben was quiet as he checked their defenses. What if someone doesn't want the job they're assigned? What if they want to try something different? "That would create chaos," Queen Zara said. "Everyone has their place in society." "On Earth, people choose their own paths," Ben explained. "Some become doctors, some become pilots, some become farmers. We believe everyone should have the chance to decide their own life." Queen Zara had never heard such an idea before. In her empire, order came from everyone knowing their place. But watching Ben work, seeing how he adapted and solved problems, she began to wonder if there might be strength in letting people choose their own way. On the second day, Ben's leg started bothering him from an old injury. Queen Zara insisted on helping with the repairs, even though royal protocol said she should never do manual labor. "You saved my life," she said firmly when Ben protested. "I will not sit idle while you work alone." Working together, they managed to improve their shelter significantly. Queen Zara was clumsy at first with the tools, but she learned quickly. Ben was patient, showing her how to strip wires and connect power couplings. "This is quite enjoyable," Queen Zara admitted as she successfully repaired a damaged panel. "I have never built anything before." "You're a natural," Ben said. "Good instincts." That night, Queen Zara shared more stories about her world, but also asked many questions about human society. She wanted to understand how their system worked without chaos, how people could be trusted to make good choices without guidance. "Some people make bad choices," Ben admitted. "But most people want to help others and build something good. If you give them the chance, they usually surprise you. Like you surprised me," Queen Zara said softly. On the third morning, they spotted ships in the sky. Queen Zara's rescue fleet had finally tracked her emergency beacon. Ben felt relieved but also strangely sad that their time together was ending. The royal ships landed with great ceremony. Soldiers in elaborate uniforms rushed to secure the area, while medical personnel hurried to check on their queen. "Your Majesty," the lead officer said with a deep bow, "we have searched the entire sector for you. The Empire rejoiced when we received your signal." Queen Zara stood proudly, every inch the royal leader again. But she looked around for Ben, wanting to introduce him to her people and thank him properly. Ben had stepped back into the cargo bay, watching from the shadows. He could see that Queen Zara belonged with her people, surrounded by the ceremony and respect of her position. He was just a cargo pilot who had happened to be in the right place at the right time. While Queen Zara spoke with her officers about the pirate attack and their rescue, Ben quietly gathered his emergency pack. The royal ships could give him passage to the nearest space station. He could disappear before Queen Zara realized he was gone. As the medical team fussed over Queen Zara's injuries and the soldiers prepared her transport, Ben slipped away through the cargo bay's rear exit. He made his way to the smaller rescue ship where a junior officer was loading supplies. "Room for one more passenger?" Ben asked casually. "I was the other crash survivor." The officer nodded and waved him aboard without ceremony. As the rescue ship lifted off, Ben watched Queen Zara through the small viewport. She was looking around frantically, finally realizing he had left without saying goodbye. Ben closed his eyes and settled back in his seat. Some meetings were meant to be brief, no matter how much they changed you. 5 years had passed since the rescue on Valdris, but Queen Zara had never stopped looking for Ben Torres. She sat in her private office aboard the royal flagship, studying the latest reports from her search teams. Hundreds of agents across dozens of star systems had been tracking down every lead. Every mention of a human cargo pilot named Ben. Still nothing concrete. "Your Majesty," reported Commander Vox, her head of intelligence, "we found 3 Ben Torres records in the freight pilot databases, but none matched the physical description from Valdris." Queen Zara sighed and looked out at the stars streaming past. Humans seem remarkably good at disappearing when they want to. "Perhaps he does not wish to be found," Commander Vox suggested carefully. "That is what worries me," Queen Zara replied. She had changed much in the 5 years since Ben had saved her life. The conversations they shared during those 3 days had planted seeds that grew into major reforms across her empire. She had established the Individual Choice Act, allowing citizens to change careers and pursue their own paths. She had created the Innovation Council, where ordinary people could present ideas to improve their communities. Many of her advisors had opposed these changes at first, but the results spoke for themselves. Productivity increased when people chose work they enjoyed. Crime decreased when citizens felt they had control over their lives. New technologies emerged when creative minds were free to experiment. Queen Zara often wondered what Ben would think of these changes. Every reform she made carried the memory of their discussions about human society and individual freedom. Meanwhile, on the frontier mining colony of New Haven, Ben Torres was helping evacuate civilians from a damaged section of the settlement. A reactor malfunction had caused structural collapse in the residential zone, and time was running out before the whole area became unsafe. "Take the children first," Ben called to the other volunteers as he guided families toward the emergency shuttles, then the elderly and injured. Ben had spent the last 5 years moving from one frontier colony to another, always helping establish new settlements or improve existing ones. He specialized in emergency systems and disaster response, skills that were desperately needed on the Outer Rim worlds. "Ben, we need you in Section 7, called Maria Santos, the colony administrator. "There are people trapped in the lower levels." Ben grabbed his emergency kit and ran toward the damaged area. He had become something of a legend among frontier workers, the pilot who could solve any crisis with whatever materials he could find. Communities competed to hire him, but Ben never stayed long in one place. He told himself it was because frontier life suited him, but the truth was more complicated. Every few months he checked the galactic news feeds for information about Queen Zara and her empire. He watched her implement reform after reform, each one making her people's lives better. He was proud of her success, but it also confirmed his belief that he had made the right choice in leaving. What could a simple cargo pilot offer someone who was changing entire worlds? "Over here!" shouted a voice from the rubble. Ben followed the sound and found a small family huddled in an air pocket beneath fallen support beams. The space was too small for rescue equipment, but Ben had dealt with similar situations before. Using his portable cutting torch and some flexible tubing, he created a safe passage for the trapped colonists to crawl through. It took 2 hours of careful work, but he managed to get all 4 family members out safely. How does he do it? Maria wondered aloud as Ben emerged from the wreckage covered in dust but smiling. Practice, Ben said simply, accepting a bottle of water from a grateful colonist. Back in her palace on the capital world, Queen Zara was reviewing the latest economic reports. The Individual Choice Act had been so successful that other alien governments were requesting copies of the legislation. Trade agreements were easier to negotiate because her citizens were genuinely happy and productive. But despite all her achievements, Queen Zara felt something was missing. She had tried to find other advisors who could offer the same fresh perspective Ben had provided, but no one seemed to understand human thinking the way he did. "Your Majesty," her secretary announced, "Ambassador Chen from the Earth Alliance is here for your meeting." "Send him in," Queen Zara said, straightening in her chair. The Earth Alliance was humanity's government, and she had been working to establish stronger ties with them. Ambassador Chen was a dignified older man with kind eyes. "Your Majesty, thank you for meeting with me. The Alliance is very impressed with your recent reforms." "They were inspired by human philosophy," Queen Zara said carefully. "I had the opportunity to learn from one of your people some years ago." "Really? That's wonderful to hear. May I ask who?" "A cargo pilot named Ben Torres. I have been trying to locate him to offer my thanks, but human freight workers seem to move around frequently." Ambassador Chen's face lit up with recognition. "Ben Torres? I know that name. He's quite famous in the frontier territories. They call him the emergency angel because he shows up whenever there's a crisis and somehow fixes everything." Queen Zara felt her heart race. "You know where he is?" "Well, his location changes regularly, but I can tell you his general area. He's been working the Outer Rim colonies for several years now. Last I heard, he was helping establish safety protocols on New Haven." Queen Zara stood up quickly, her mind already racing with plans. "Ambassador Chen, I believe this meeting just became much more important than either of us expected." Ben Torres had been hiding in plain sight, doing exactly what she should have expected, helping people and solving impossible problems. Queen Zara smiled for the first time in months. After 5 years of searching, she finally had a real lead. The hunt was almost over. Queen Zara's royal fleet dropped out of hyperspace near the New Haven system, but something was wrong. Instead of the peaceful mining operation she expected to find, the long-range scanners showed 3 pirate ships attacking the colony. "Your Majesty, we're picking up distress signals from the surface," reported Captain Rex from the bridge. "The colony is under heavy assault." Queen Zara felt her stomach tighten with worry. If Ben was down there, he was in terrible danger. "How long has the attack been going on?" "Based on the damage readings, approximately 6 hours, Captain Rex replied. "The pirates appear to be after the colony's rare mineral deposits." "Prepare for immediate intervention," Queen Zara commanded, "and scan for any defense patterns from the surface. I want to know what the colonists are doing to protect themselves." On the surface of New Haven, Ben Torres crouched behind a makeshift barricade made from mining equipment and metal sheets. The colony had no military defenses. It was supposed to be too remote for pirates to bother with. But someone had leaked information about their rich mineral finds, and now 3 fully armed raider ships were trying to take everything. "Ben, they're moving around our left flank," called out David Park, the colony's security chief. "We can't cover all the approaches with so few people." Ben studied the tactical situation. The colonists numbered only 43 people, including children and elderly residents. The pirates had at least 100 fighters with advanced weapons. By all logical measures, the colony should have surrendered hours ago. But Ben had learned something important during his years on the frontier. Humans didn't always follow logical measures. "David, take 12 people and fall back to position 3, Ben ordered. "Make lots of noise and fire everything you have, but don't try to hold the position. I want them to think that's our main defense." "What are you planning?" David asked. "Something they won't expect," Ben replied with a grim smile. While David's group created a distraction, Ben led the remaining colonists through the mining tunnels beneath the settlement. Using his knowledge of the terrain and some creative engineering, he had spent the last 4 hours setting up a series of traps and ambush points throughout the underground system. The pirates were used to overwhelming their targets with superior firepower. They weren't prepared for an enemy that used the environment as a weapon. "Position 1, now," Ben whispered into his communicator. Hidden throughout the tunnels, colonists triggered explosives that Ben had created from mining charges. The blasts collapsed several tunnel entrances, cutting off the pirates' retreat routes and dividing their forces into smaller groups. "What's happening down there?" the pirate commander shouted over his radio. "Report." But his men were too busy dealing with Ben's next surprise. Automated mining drones reprogrammed to attack anything that moved through the tunnels. Ben had turned the colony's own equipment against the invaders. Above ground, Queen Zara watched the battle through her ship's sensors with growing amazement. The tactical display showed the pirates being systematically outmaneuvered by a much smaller force using incredibly creative strategies. "Captain Rex, are you seeing this?" she asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. Someone down there is using the terrain and available resources in ways I've never seen before. They're fighting like they have 100 advantages instead of being outnumbered 3-1. Queen Zara smiled. She recognized this style of thinking. "That's human strategy. Prepare the landing forces." In the tunnels below, Ben was leading his people through the final phase of his plan. Using redirected mining lasers and carefully placed explosive charges, they had turned the underground complex into a maze that only they could navigate safely. "Ben, this is incredible," whispered Maria Santos as they moved through a passage Ben had secretly prepared days earlier. "How did you know to set all this up?" "I've been watching the shipping reports," Ben replied. "Too many people knew about your mineral finds. I figured someone would come looking eventually." The pirates found themselves trapped in unfamiliar tunnels while the colonists moved freely through hidden passages. What should have been a simple raid had turned into a nightmare. By the time Queen Zara's ships arrived in orbit, half the pirate force was either captured or fleeing. "This is Queen Zara of the Corvani Empire." Her voice echoed across all communication frequencies. "Attention, pirate vessels. You are ordered to withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The remaining pirate ships, already demoralized by their losses on the surface, took one look at the powerful royal fleet and jumped to hyperspace without firing a shot." Ben emerged from the tunnels with the other colonists just as Queen Zara's shuttle landed in the settlement's main square. She stepped out wearing simple traveling clothes instead of her royal robes, but Ben recognized her immediately. "Hello, Ben," Queen Zara said quietly as the other colonists stared in amazement at their royal rescuer. "Your Majesty," Ben replied with a formal nod. "Thank you for the assistance." "We need to talk," Queen Zara said firmly. "Privately." They walked away from the crowd to a quiet area near the mining equipment. For a long moment, neither spoke. Queen Zara looked older than Ben remembered, but there was a new strength in her eyes. 5 years, she said finally. 5 years I've been looking for you. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find one human in a galaxy of billions? I figured you'd be too busy being a queen to worry about a cargo pilot, Ben replied. Too busy? Queen Zara's voice rose slightly. Ben, you changed everything. The reforms you inspired have transformed my entire empire. Billions of people live better lives because of the ideas you shared with me during those 3 days. Ben was quiet for a moment, processing this information. You implemented those changes on your own. You didn't need me for that. But I needed to thank you, Queen Zara said, and I need to ask you something important. Will you come back with me? Ben stared at Queen Zara for a long moment, feeling the weight of her question. Around them, the colonists of New Haven were cleaning up after the pirate attack, but their voices seemed distant and unreal. Come back with you to do what exactly? Ben asked carefully. I'm not royal material, Zara. I fix broken things and help people in emergencies. That's not the same as running an empire. Queen Zara pulled out a small data pad and handed it to him. Look at this. Ben took the device and scrolled through the information displayed on the screen. Economic reports, social surveys, productivity statistics, all showing massive improvements across the Corvani Empire over the past 5 years. The Individual Choice Act increased worker satisfaction by 60%, Queen Zara explained. Crime rates dropped by 40% once people felt they had control over their own lives. Innovation increased by 200% when we started listening to ideas from ordinary citizens. Ben continued reading, his amazement growing. This is incredible. Your people must love these changes. They do. But Ben, I didn't create these policies in isolation. Every single reform was based on something you said during those 3 days on Valdris. Your ideas about human society, about individual freedom, about trusting people to make good choices. All of it became the foundation for transforming my empire. Ben handed back the data pad, still shaking his head. You would have figured this out eventually. You're smart enough to see what needed changing. Maybe, Queen Zara admitted. But it would have taken decades, maybe centuries. And how many people would have suffered while I slowly learned what you taught me in 3 days? Before Ben could respond, Maria Santos came running toward them, her face pale with worry. Ben, we have a problem, she said breathlessly. The mining reactor is destabilizing. The pirate attack damaged some critical systems, and we're looking at a possible core breach within the next few hours. Ben immediately shifted into crisis mode. How many people need to be evacuated? All of them, Maria replied. But our transport ships were damaged in the attack. We can't evacuate everyone in time. Queen Zara stepped forward. My ships can handle the evacuation easily, but can the reactor be stabilized? Not with the equipment we have here, Maria said hopelessly. We'd need specialized parts and at least a dozen technical experts working together. Ben was already analyzing the problem in his mind. Actually, we might be able to jury-rig a solution. Maria, do you still have those high-capacity cooling units in Storage Warehouse 3? Yes, but they're not designed for reactor work. They don't need to be. We just need to buy time. Ben turned to Queen Zara. Your ships, do they have industrial fabrication units? Of course, why? Because we're going to build a completely new cooling system using parts from your ships, our mining equipment, and anything else we can find. It's never been tried before, but the theory is sound. Maria looked skeptical. Ben, that sounds incredibly dangerous. More dangerous than a reactor explosion? Ben asked with a slight smile. Over the next 4 hours, Ben worked alongside Queen Zara and her technical crew to implement his improvised solution. Zara was amazed watching Ben coordinate the complex operation, seamlessly combining human resourcefulness with Corvani technology in ways that neither species had ever attempted. Connect the thermal exchange unit here, Ben directed, pointing to a junction point he had calculated by hand, and route the coolant flow through this secondary system. That configuration doesn't exist in any manual, observed Chief. Engineer Ross from Zara's crew, that's because we're writing a new manual right now, Ben replied, making another adjustment to the cooling array. Queen Zara found herself working alongside Ben just like they had on Valdris, solving problems through pure determination and creative thinking, but this time they had the resources of an entire empire to work with. Pressure is stabilizing, Maria announced from the control room, core temperature dropping to safe levels. A cheer went up from the assembled workers. They had prevented a disaster that could have killed hundreds of people and destroyed the entire colony. How did you know that would work? Queen Zara asked Ben as they watched the reactor systems return to normal operation. I didn't, Ben admitted, but sometimes you have to try impossible things because the alternative is unacceptable. Queen Zara was quiet for a moment, then said, That's exactly the kind of thinking my empire needs. Not just in emergencies, but every day. The ability to see solutions where others see only problems. Ben looked around at the colonists celebrating their survival, then at the Corvani crew members who had worked alongside humans as equals for the first time in their lives. He realized something important. The partnership between their species had already accomplished something neither could have achieved alone. If I came with you, Ben said slowly, it wouldn't be as some kind of royal advisor locked away in a palace. I'd want to keep doing this, solving real problems for real people. That's exactly what I'm offering, Queen Zara replied. A position as Special Coordinator for Innovation and Emergency Response. You'd have access to resources from across the empire, but you'd use them to help communities like this one. Ben thought about all the frontier colonies that struggled with impossible challenges every day. With Queen Zara's support, he could help dozens of worlds instead of just one at a time. And we'd be partners? Ben asked. Real partners, not just human and alien working together? We already proved we're good partners, Queen Zara said with a smile. On Valdris and again today, Ben extended his hand. All right, Your Majesty. Let's change some worlds. Queen Zara shook his hand firmly. Together. As the twin suns set over New Haven, Ben Torres realized that some disappearances were just temporary preparations for even greater adventures.